Go ahead.
Hi, this is Richard Rainey. I'm here with Kevin Litten with NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune, here to discuss the first exciting week of the mayor's race. Candidates all qualified. They're all in on last Friday. We've had a week of sort of developing their pitches. Desiree Charbonnet has come out with her crime plan on Monday, followed by LaToya Cantrell releasing her platform for the race. Also, on Monday, the campaign finance reports came out, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. But so, Kevin, if you can sort of fill us in, let's start with where the field is and how you see things shaping up with the 18 candidates that have qualified.
Well, it's been an interesting week. I think we've only really focused on 2 candidates this week. We've had plenty to write about with just 2, even though the field is 18 strong. So many of these candidates we have not really even figured out who they are, what they're about, what their platform is. You probably have 5 that we know quite a bit about, and I think out of those 5, we probably have a strong field of 3 and even have a pretty good idea of who might end up in the runoff.
Right, and it might change. It depends on where the money comes in. The fundraising reports on Monday were pretty startling. We saw that Desiree Charbonnet, who got into the race, I wouldn't say late, but she just started making noise in April, officially announced in May, and within that time, a very short time span, she was able to raise $870,000. LaToya Cantrell has been trying for quite a few months more, and hasn't quite caught up to that. In fact, I think she's about 151,000, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think the real story there was just the way that Desiree Charbonnet was able to really trounce her competitors in terms of fundraising effort, and I think we were fairly surprised by that, but what we certainly know going forward is that money is going to be a big theme in this race going forward. So we'll talk a little bit about that later, but I would say that we have had a really couple of busy weeks, both on our crime team covering exactly what's going on crime-wise in the city, and that's translated into a lot of political fodder. We had John Kennedy and Mitch Landrieu going at it over the past 2 weeks, and then the crime plans come up as major factors in the announcements of platforms, which started with LaToya on Tuesday, announcing her full platform, and Desiree Charbonnet kind of tried to one-up that and released her crime plan the night before. I thought what really was interesting in coming out of these crime plans and looking at both of them is that you had a lot of specifics from Desiree Charbonnet on her crime plan, some funds that she's looking at to where she'd like to pay for these crime plans, which gives you a sense of where the mayor's priorities might be if she's elected. LaToya Cantrell had a much broader platform and didn't go into a lot of specifics with her crime plan, but I think both of them had a big focus on community policing. They both had similar approaches in wanting to get a new police chief put in place, although Desiree Charbonnet has said she's going to launch the nationwide search, which would give us, for the first time in about 18 years, that we would have somebody who didn't come through the ranks if she did decide to go with that nationwide search. I've certainly seen other police searches start as a nationwide search and then you end up picking somebody local. So we'll see how that goes. Did you have any reaction on how you thought the crime plans came out this week?
I mean, it's hard at this point. The emphasis on community policing was not something that was surprising. That is a theme that has been batted around, actually within the Landrieu administration as well. I mean, that's sort of one of the top things. So at this point, I'm really hoping for more detail. The big thing is going to be how they're going to grow the police force in order to do effective community policing. Like as we know, it's down to somewhere between 1,100 and 1,200 officers. Going idea is that 1,500 is the right size force. Where they're going to get those 400 officers and how they're going to grow that through recruitment classes and deal with retention, because you wind up losing almost as many officers as you gain, at least at this point, every year. So I'd like to hear more about how they plan to grow the force. I think Desiree Charbonnet put forward that she wanted to add 80 to 100 officers a year over the next 4 or 5 years. I know that's been a goal of the Landrieu administration too, but hasn't been able to keep up with attrition rates. I don't know if she has offered any more details how to handle that balance.
I think what this all ends up is what makes you different than the Landrieu administration in getting the size of the force from around 12 to 1,300 where it is now, and what everybody, the mayoral candidates and Mitch Landrieu agree, is a force that should be up to 1,500. The Landrieu administration hasn't been able to get it done. What's it going to be done differently under a new mayor that it would get that done? So that's what we'll look at going forward, I think.
And that actually brings up the broader point, and I think on the political stance of you're seeing an outgoing mayor who's been, I believe, a strong mayor over 8 years, and now in the position of seeing whether or not his legacy continues. So I think Landrieu, regardless of whether he endorses or winds up using his PAC to back candidates, will be a force in this race. So I'm curious to see if the candidates run to him or away from him. I don't know if you've gathered sort of a sense of how he may influence how this may shape up. I know it's early.
Well, I think the some of the mayor's legacy is going to be a target in this mayor's race. I mean, LaToya Cantrell put out a big public safety plan, but I think the big headline that came out of it that overshadowed it, and really in some ways started overshadowing this really what they would have liked to see as a successful launch to her platform, was a focus on traffic cameras, which also falls under public safety. Now, LaToya Cantrell says in her speech she's going to remove all the traffic cameras. Then she meets with reporters after the speech who press her on detail, and then all of a sudden we're only going to take some of them down. Then the next day, more questions. Is that what you meant? Why would you say that in the speech that way? And she comes back and walks the whole thing back, and we're back to where we started with the speech. So I think that really marks kind of a bumpy start to the launch of her platform, and the traffic cameras overshadowed that. But to talk about Mitch Landrieu's legacy, that's certainly part of his legacy. The traffic cameras went up under Mitch Landrieu. They're incredibly unpopular, as evidenced by this a lot of talk about it this week. And so we'll really have to kind of see how those kinds of promises play out, and which are the promises where you're advancing the mayor's legacy, and which are the promises that are really aimed at taking down some of the things the mayor did. Mm-hmm.
So actually, I want to talk a little bit about how that story came about with the traffic cameras. Do you think, the way it sort of came, I think the title of your story was full circle on that. Could that be a weakness for a candidate if you wind up having to either backtrack or look like you're flip-flopping on an issue? Do you think that's a theme that's going to come up here? Do you think she's going to find her sea legs and really be able to develop sharp points?
It's hard to tell, I think, at this point so early in the race. One thing that struck me, even going into that speech, because we got a copy of it just before it started, I was surprised at how long the speech was, how many points it hit, and if you take that much time to explain so many different things, you're not going to be able to get into specifics. So then when you start getting questioned on the specifics, perhaps it's not a surprise that you're not ready to get into those specifics right away. Now, the traffic cameras are obviously a crowd pleaser, so I think I was surprised by the fact that there wasn't more readiness for detail, or there wasn't kind of we know that we're going to have to be talking about this for the next day, and that's going to be the headline. I mean, they did have some great things in that launch that I thought were good signs for a mayoral race. I mean, the headline out of that story was, nothing stops a bullet like a job. That was the quotable thing in the Law Politics roundup that came out today, and I think that's probably going to resonate in her campaign too. But yeah, she's going to have to be ready to talk specifics, I think.
Right. Well, let's circle back to the money. That's always going to be an interesting thing, seeing who is donating to these campaigns, who the candidates are soliciting. That really is the driving force, the blood of any political campaign. And the way it's shaping up right now, Charbonnet is head and shoulders above the rest of the field. Now, we're going to be working on a project together, and hopefully, with the help of our readers, try to track the connections between all of these donors and the candidates and projects and business with the government. And so we will be hopefully launching a database, a searchable database that we can work with the public to figure out all the connections there on Monday. But in the meantime, I wanted to looking at the numbers and looking at what Charbonnet has raised, I noticed there was a lot of donations that had maxed out at the 5,000. So it seems like she's come super fast out of the gate. Is there room for her to continue to raise money and grow? Looking at what 150 to 200 donors that have already given.
Yeah, that's something that I think we've both been talking about. I've heard that from sources, some concern from sources, that there's already quite a few at the $5,000 mark. If you looked at her average donation, the influence of a $5,000 donation was so large that the average ended up being around 2,200, which really speaks to how many large donations there were. So not just 5,000, but there were 4,000s in there. There were 2,500. So you've certainly got people that are maxed out or getting close to that. Now there's other outlets that people can be donating. I mean, you mentioned earlier that Mitch Landrieu has a PAC. Now, PACs were seen as a big influence in the governor's race 2 years ago. They were an influence in the Senate race that was just concluded last year. So that is an outlet that donors can go back to. So one thing that we might want to be looking for is if a candidate like Desiree Charbonnet does start to hit that ceiling, do we start seeing PACs move in? Now we are already going to have an influence of political action committees. Mitch Landrieu has a little less than $200,000 in his. Sidney Torres, who decided not to run for mayor, says that he's going to start one. So I think we've seen from the very beginning, which is why we're really excited to launch this project, that money has an influence in politics. It's what sort of greases the gears, and we want to try to provide people with a window into that they might not necessarily have. So we understand as reporters how to download the databases, how to examine them. We're going to try to put them in a little bit of a more user-friendly format, publish them on our website, try to give you, the reader, a little bit more information when there's maybe not some clarity about who actually donated, because you can donate through limited liability corporations in Louisiana. So we're going to try to identify who's behind those, and we're going to be asking for tips from readers. We thought that, it's two of us. We have a few more people on the politics team that'll be working on it, but we can't do it alone with 4 or 5 people. So we're asking readers to tip us off on people that they might recognize in the database, let us know what connections maybe we could make, and we're really excited about going through those tips and trying to get more information out there through the databases.
Absolutely. So, I guess in conclusion, it's been a pretty interesting first week in watching these campaigns sort of form. We hope to be doing this on a regular basis, sort of informing you on how our reporting is going, what we're finding out, what we're hearing. So this is sort of the first of those conversations. But yeah, looking forward to everybody's help and participation, and let's see, what happens.
Yeah, really excited to launch Money in Politics on Monday, so look for that.